Welcome back to Bachelor Buzz, the best place to come for recaps on your favorite reality TV dating show and the latest in Bachelor Nation news. I'm your host, Arena. And today, unfortunately, we don't have my lovely co-host, Julia. She's actually out of town and going to a good friend's wedding, so she's unable to join us. However, she will be back next week at the beginning of November. And we do have a special guest the week after with Jenna from Date Card Pod for what should be the season finale of this first season of The Golden Bachelorette. So, guys, I don't have any bubbly or buzz today. I don't even have my sparkling water. It is Halloween. As you can see, I've got the ears on. I've got two young children, and this morning was a sprint, not a marathon, a sprint to get my daughter to school and drop off the Halloween treats I volunteered to bring in and make sure her costume was ready to go and she looked great. And then my son was in his costume and I got him to preschool and they're going to do festivities there that my husband and I are going to go to. And then my daughter has stuff towards the end of the school day that we're going to go to. And then, of course, trick-or-treating. So my ears for Halloween. But now that you've seen that, it's time to get serious. All right. So this was a very important episode, as it is every single season of The Bachelorette and Bachelor. We start out with the cold opening, and this is a sad cold opening. It kind of alludes to what is going to happen. It foreshadows, and we saw snippets of this in the teaser for this episode and for the end of the season, so it wasn't a surprise that they showed it. In the cold opening, Joan is upset. She is really sad, and it breaks my heart to see her feeling so awful and feeling as though, is this working out, this entire journey? Is it truly working out? And we're going to find out what happened with that. So, in the very beginning, she gets a visitor, and it is Nancy from the first season of The Golden Bachelor. And Nancy was also in the original Askin group. She is local to Joan. As we all know, Joan is from Rockville, Maryland. Nancy's from Alexandria, Virginia. And if you know anything about the DMV or the not the Department of Motor Vehicles, but the DC, Maryland, Virginia area of the United States. All those states and DC are very close to each other. So basically, Rockville, Maryland, and Alexandria, Virginia are not a far drive. I think about like 30 minutes. So really not bad. So they become really, really close. And Joan said she's one of her good friends now. So it was really great to see Nancy come in. And the fact that also Nancy lost her husband as well. So she is a widow too. So they connect on a lot of things and have things in common. So it was great to see Nancy come in and just kind of sit and speak to Joan and listen to her. And, Joan just kind of told her about each man who's left on this journey. We have a Guy, and we have Chuck, and we have Pascal. And she talks about each and every one of them. And, Nancy's just there to support her, be there for her friend. And I think she just did such a wonderful job just listening to Joan and just being there to tell her that you deserve this and that your feelings are totally normal. It's okay to feel like that you're maybe holding back because of her feelings for her late husband, John, Joan's late husband, and that, even feeling a little guilty that she shouldn't, feeling guilty that she is on a journey to love someone else, another man, another romantic love. It's been 32 years she didn't do that. So it was great having Nancy there. So then Joan goes on to her first date, the first date that we see. Now, we always try to remember these dates may be filmed in a different order, but the first date that we see is with Guy. And they meet on the docks, and they get on a yacht, and then they go snorkeling, and it's wonderful. They have champagne on the yacht. They talk. Guy is telling her basically, my kids, my sisters, my family, they all adored you. They loved you, and they did. If you saw last week's Hometowns episode and listened to our podcast or watched us, then you know that, yes, his family loved her. And, Guy is very much into Joan. And let's also remind ourselves and remember that Joan does not know that what we all know now, outside of this show about Guy and the information that came out about him. Okay. So she is in the zone and she's in the moment and she really likes Guy. She sees that they could have a good life together, and that he is being vulnerable and expressing his feelings, and she loves that. And he really truly is. And it is very apparent that, well, it seems apparent that he seems more into her than she's into him. She's into Guy. She likes Guy. There's a reason he is there. He's in the top 3. And as I always say, because we always get people that say, oh, well, the lead is not into this third person. That person's not really into. They got to the top 3. They're into this person. And quite honestly, especially with the golden seasons, these mature adults are going to do what they want. And they're not going to worry about what producers or anyone in their ear telling them, oh, this seems like a great person, let me move them along. They're not going to do that. They're very much going with their mind and their heart. So they have a great date, the snorkeling, and they share some beautiful kisses. They go on to the evening portion where they talk, and Joan explains to him and also later on to Chalk that she does not feel comfortable and will not be physically intimate with every single man and any of the men on these overnight dates, because that's something that she wants to save for the person that she ends up with at the end of this journey. And it means a lot to her to honor that relationship she has with that person. So Guy understands, and she offers him the card. He reads the note and they decide to go off to the overnights. And you know what I kind of loved here is that the next thing that we see is Guy walking on the beach holding his sneakers. And we don't see him leaving her the next day, because I feel like we don't need to see that. That's fine. We just don't need it. So Guy leaves and he is saying just how amazing it all feels that he had this evening, this night with Joan, and that he was even saying earlier, it's intimacy means something different in the different decades of your life, right? And by this point in their lives, they're both in their 60s, the intimacy is more than just the physical. And he is just over the moon and excited to see how things can continue to progress and go on. So that's Guy. Now we have Chalk, and we see Chalk sit down with Jesse. Jesse's here! Woo woo! We're so excited to see Jesse. We didn't see him a lot this season, but I mean, understandably, he still has a new baby girl, and he's spending time with his family, and he works a lot, guys. I mean, we all know he does college football, college game day. He does shows that he hosts, like cooking shows, and they're great shows. So it was fun and great to see Jesse sit down with Chalk, and basically Jesse asks him, what does it mean when you say you're crazy about Joan? And Chalk is just full out like, well, because I'm in love with her, and that's what that means for me. And he's like, I'm not one to just kind of throw it out there and say it. And so once again, these emotions, these things that we're hearing from Chalk are solidified, confirmed. He is in love with Joan. He is very much into Joan, of course. This man does not use those words lightly. And he is very excited to see her today. He knows there's 2 other men here who are very different from him, but in his heart, he feels like it's him and Joan at the end. And that's that. He's not going to be overconfident about it, he says, but he really feels like it's them. So then he meets up with Joan and they go, they get in the ATV, they drive around. He's driving around the island in Tahiti. I forgot to mention, oh my gosh, guys, they're in Tahiti, Moria, the island of Tahiti. It is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I would love to go to Tahiti one day, guys. It is a beautiful place. And as we learn later, we get to meet some of the people who live there and are indigenous to the area. And it is amazing and wonderful. And I love when they go to places like Tahiti and Fiji and things like that. In Hawaii, I just love it. So they have a lovely date. They're really connecting. And Joan, oh my goodness, she makes this comment that, I think this comment basically that she, not word for word, don't quote me on this, guys, that she is even more excited to see Chalk than she thought she would be. She obviously knows that she has feelings for Chalk, but they are just so connected, guys. So then they go on to evening portion of the date, and they sit down and they talk, and, Jock is just telling her basically, it's you, it's me, I feel this, and everything. And she is just so, just wrapped up in it with Chalk. And you can tell that they are so connected. And they share passionate kisses. So the passion is there. And the passion there is something that I did not see with Guy. I saw two people who get along, who are compatible, who care about each other, and would have what seems like a lovely relationship or marriage together. But the real the strong passion, the spark, that I see with Joan and Chalk, I don't see with Guy. So, they share the evening together, and the next day, Chalk is in his ITMs. First we see him writing in his journal, and he's in his ITMs, and the producer asks him, like, what did you do last night? And Chalk is like, well, I'm not going to say what we did. If Joan wants to, that's up to her. But, I'm not going to talk about it. But it was a great evening. It was lovely. And he is smiling from ear to ear, like he cannot stop smiling. So we know that the evening, their overnight, went really well, and they must have talked about a lot of things and really solidified their feelings for each other. And certainly we know, at least on Chalk's end, solidified it for him so far. So then we go on to the third date, and this is the really big part of this episode, everyone. This is something that, honestly, we could have said might have been coming, but I think that Julia and I hoped for more. We have Pascal, and we see Pascal sit down with Jesse, and he talks to him. And basically, Pascal, he talks about, a lot of people think that he's a certain way just because he drives a fancy car. He dresses a certain way. He likes certain wonderful things, very bourgeois, which I don't fault him for, like I've said before in this show, in our podcast, is that, hey, bougie, is great. I'm bougie. I don't care if people think that and know that about me. It doesn't describe who you are on the inside. And that's the point. So, Pascal is a very kind person. He doesn't like to hurt people. This is what we see. And honestly, as far as I know, we haven't seen anything come out about him. So he just really likes the finer things in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he's basically saying that, he had this relationship about a year ago where he almost got engaged. And the relationship altogether was about 2 years. And he loved this woman, and they broke up, and then they got back together. They broke up again, and they got back together. They broke up for the third time, and that's when he told her, we're not doing this again. We can't keep doing this. We're not going to move on. And I think, they reached an agreement that they weren't going to move on. But that really, I don't want to say fully broke him, but it wounded him greatly. And obviously he's had serious relationships in the past because he does have children. So he's had serious relationships, and here he is, and he doesn't have someone right now, and he says just how much his kids love him and that they want to see him happy with someone, and that, his son, I think, told him, he's mentioned that, they're going to be moving on with their lives and having their own families, and they want to see him happy and have someone too. So as much as he really wants this with Joan, he's not there. He still has a wall up. So then Jesse, listens to him and talks to him, and then bids him, goodbye, and goes on his way. And now we see Joan walking up to Pascal for their overnight day date. And the first part of their day is this really lovely ceremony that is called La Orana. And this is a Tahitian welcoming ceremony, and they welcome them, they bring them over, they get leis. It's very beautiful. We're learning a little bit more about the culture in Tahiti, the indigenous people, and I really, really love that. I love when we take time to learn about these areas in which this show travels to for their paradise type of time. It's important to learn about the people who make that their home. So we learn about just different things. They try different foods, and Pascal is having a great time with Joan. He's speaking French because, Tahiti is a French Polynesian island. It's in the area. And so they're speaking French, and Pascal feels at home because it's home for him. He's speaking French. They're speaking French, Tahitian people. And he's also translating for Joan different things. And they're just having a great time, and it's a fun time. And then they move on to a traditional Tahitian bonding ceremony. And it's basically a time for them to be vulnerable and talk about what's stopping them or making, upsetting them, stopping them from moving on. or not even moving on, just continuing to move forward in their lives. And hopefully this bonding ceremony is something that helps them because they're talking about it, and then they can come together and that helps them. So, and learn what to release. So they do this bonding ceremony, and it's wonderful. Joan talks about her fears of that she won't be honoring John, which is her late husband, and his memory by moving forward and loving another man in that romantic way, because it's been 32 years and she's never loved anyone else, you know, at this point, in this way of where she was ready to get married. So she talks about that and tries to release that. And then, you know, Pascal is there. And during this time, Pascal is getting a little nervous. He's getting a little apprehensive. He's starting to feel like, wow, he was not expecting this. He was expecting a fun, more carefree date, to have fun like kids. He wasn't expecting this deep time where they're talking about their feelings, and he just feels like he's not ready for it. He's just not ready. And by the end of this date, in his ITMs, he's saying, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. So they get to the nighttime portion, and this is where Pascal really expresses to Joan how he's feeling, and saying how he's just not there. He still has a wall. He's not there yet. And Joan is saying, you know, well, are you going to get there, or are you never going to get there? Because basically there's a difference. And I really appreciate that Joan said this, and this was so important for her to say, because she's a very smart woman. She knows what she's talking about. And there is a difference. If you're never going to get there, then it's time to part ways and say goodbyes. If you feel like you could get there, and it's just because of this timing of this journey on this show, which is an expedited way to meet and fall in love and find someone to marry, that's different. And basically what he tells her is that he knows what love is. And he's like, you know what love is. We've had love before. And he's like, I'm just not there. And it sounded like to Joan that he can't fall in love with her. It's her. Even though that's not what he meant. And he was trying his best to be as you know, kind about saying this as possible, because he doesn't want to hurt her, and he does care about her. But essentially, Pascal says it's time for him to go. And oh, Joan, her heart is broken, and it breaks me. Her heart is broken because she feels like now her fear is here that someone's not going to feel the same way about her, because she said before that she could see herself with Pascal. So I truly do believe that Julia and I were right. It was Chalk and Pascal, the top two. So we see teaser for next week. We see, not next week, the week after, for the final episode where she's basically saying that she's feeling apprehensive, she's feeling insecure about this. So we're going to see what happens, but I truly believe it is going to work out. They try to show some teasers that show that Chalk is maybe feeling a little uncomfortable and everything, but I think it's going to work out, guys. We see a teaser for the Men Tell All, and we see Pascal there. We see all our other favorites. We see Mark, Kelsey's dad. We see Charles, and then we also see Jonathan. So it's really wonderful. So that's the episode today, guys. That's the recap. I've got to dash. I've got to run. I've got to get to my son's costume parade at school for Halloween. And I really appreciate you listening to us and watching today. And see you next week. Julia will be back, and have a wonderful Halloween weekend if you celebrate, and Dia de los Muertos, which is tomorrow. And just have a great November, start here in November. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.